Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Beyond the Cage podcast. I'm your host, Jim Graham. Alongside me is my co-host, Billy Brandt, better known as Big Shot Bill. And on this week's show, we're going to go over some of the top headlines in the world of mixed martial arts, including Ronda Rousey against Chris Cyborg. And we're also going to recap the main card for UFC Nashville from this past weekend. And we're going to... Oh, wait, we're not going to do picks because, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, there is no UFC fight this weekend. Not only is there not a UFC fight this weekend, there's no Bellator, there's no RFA, there's no World Series of Fighting, there's no Titan FC. I don't think there's like a Cage Warriors or or anything else. For some reason, this weekend here in the middle of August, everybody just decided to go, we won't have an event this weekend. So here's your 1 week off. This is the all-star break of MMA here in August with no MMA. So we just have a lot of news to talk about. So that will be this week's show. And next week, we'll be back picking some UFC fights and whatnot as the schedule starts to pick up as we head towards fall here in 2015. So I will open up to Billy Brandt. And how's it going today?
Pretty good. A little confused. I don't know what to talk about with no fights coming up next weekend, but we'll figure it out.
All right. Again, you can follow him on Twitter at WBrand21. I'm on Twitter at Jim Graham. Before we get to our headlines, still got to mention we're still 6 likes away on our Facebook page. We're trying to get to 400 likes, so go over to facebook.com/beyondthecage, our Facebook page, and like us, share us. And if we get to 400 likes, we're going to give away signed photos from Sam Alvey and Jessica I from the UFC. We'll do a contest to give those 2 signed photos away. So please go over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/beyondthecage podcast, and like us today. All right, let's get to some news items. As I mentioned, let's start right at the bat here. We got a lot of upcoming announced fights for the UFC, a lot of big-time ones. Let's start first. We already knew a lot of these fights were going to kind of happen here. We were just kind of looking for an event, but the big one that was announced, Billy, December 12th, it will be in Las Vegas, Nevada, and that's going to be Aldo McGregor. We're hopefully finally going to get that fight after many months of buildup, of course, leading into 189. It will now officially be UFC 194. It will be the last pay-per-view of 2015. Of course, the New Year's Eve card will technically be January 2nd. That is looking as though it's going to be Rockhold against Weidman and possibly Ronda Tate 3. That's kind of looking what the New Year's Eve card will be. Of course, we have Gustafsson against Cormier will be coming up in October. That's going to be in Houston, Texas. Of course, we also have Jessica I against Juliana Pena was added to that card the first weekend of October. As far as pay-per-views go, the only other one, of course, was Aldo McGregor. And and also we got some news coming up for next weekend's card. Neil Magny will step in for Rick Story against Eric Silva. So that's kind of a big change to that card. That was a big kind of co-main event for the UFC's first excursion in Saskatchewan. So just your thoughts, Billy, here on the upcoming matchups for the UFC.
Yeah, there's so many good ones. I don't even know where to start. I mean, with Aldo McGregor, I'm surprised they ended up doing that date and switching it to Vegas. I was kind of excited to see if they could do Dallas, but I guess you got to do it in Vegas this time. And for Neil Magny, that's really cool how quick he can turn around. He took a tough loss after being on that long win streak, and it's cool to see him back in there so quick with still a really good fight and a good matchup.
Well, I think one of the reasons they may have switched it, Billy, the day before UFC 194, there is a proposed UFC fight night, which I'm pretty sure is going to be the Ultimate Fighter finale, because we will have Conor McGregor against Uriah Faber for the coaches there, of kind of like a USA-UK kind of thing. And I think they wanted that to be in Vegas with the show being in Vegas. So I think the finale will be Friday night with his fight in the title fight on Saturday. And I'm assuming Uriah Faber will be fighting somebody on one of those 2 cards. In my mind, I'd have Faber fight as the main event of the finale card to kind of draw some more interest into that. And then obviously, the next night you have Conor fight Aldo.
Yeah, I didn't know that was right before. I'm not mad. I think it'll still be good in Vegas, and especially if they do that, like back-to-back cards. I was just kind of excited to actually see if they put their best stars together, how good would they do in a stadium that large?
I think it will happen eventually, whether it's Cowboy Stadium, well, Billy, you and I can hold out that it's right here in Detroit at Ford Field. That would be pretty excellent. As we know, that we've had WrestleMania here at Ford Field. They had over 80,000 people, the most ever in an event in Ford Field. And then you add in, they've been mini concerts, they host Super Bowls, Frozen Four, Final Four. We've had a lot of events here at Ford Field. I think we know how to do it here in Detroit. We got a lot of good hotels. I think the city is starting to come up. And not only do I just want an event back in the city, Billy, I think we can hold something like this, and I think we can draw the interest for it as well.
100%. I don't even know where to start there. I've been asking for another Detroit event forever, and especially if we were able to host a large one like that. But we for sure can when they have these big events. People show up and come to Detroit.
And we got, if you want to do a fan expo, Kobo Expo Center is perfect. I mean, we host the biggest night in automobiles in the world in the North American International Auto Show every year. So if it's good enough for them, I would say it's good enough for the UFC Fan Expo.
Yeah, I can't even harp on this enough. I feel like Detroit needs more.
Well, maybe they're holding out for the brand new Red Wings arena.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think that's going to also draw some interest too when that gets completed.
I'm sure they have plans for that.
All right. As far as the events go, yeah, I was kind of looking forward to a mega fight in Dallas. I was thinking about kind of heading out, but when they announced it in Vegas, I was kind of like, yeah, that does make sense because he's going to be on the Ultimate Fighter. Then you see they kind of move one of their other fight nights they had around to the date before. So I am thinking about possibly heading out there for that weekend and either seeing both fights or one fight and then the bar for the pay-per-view, however that may work out. But I think that would be a good weekend to be in Las Vegas. So I like the matchups. And then some of the ones we're still kind of waiting on here. We're still waiting on there's going to be UFC 193. The UFC website hasn't officially updated, but that looks like it's going to be Robbie Lawler against Carlos Condit. Also, Mark Hunt said he's going to fight in the card. I still think he's looking for an opponent as well, and that is proposed for November 14th. That will be 193. They're also looking for a headliner for their first UFC event in Seoul, South Korea. My guess is Benson Henderson.
Yeah,
being half Korean, so that would be my guess for a headliner against two. I'm not sure, but I gotta imagine he's on the card. Probably Dong-Hyun Kim as well for the co-main event, being from Korea, and then you'll probably get some of your other Japanese and Korean fighters like Hung-Gyu Lim might be on there. Maybe we see one more Gomi. I'm trying to think else on here, but that would probably kind of be my guess. Probably some of the Australian guys too, because it's the time zone's very similar. A little kind of a far flight, but they don't have to be too they don't have to get adjusted to a whole new time zone or anything really.
Yeah, I just hope for Benson that he gets that main event, and rather he gets a big fight at 155 or 170. I'm not sure really what he's doing, but he needs to fight a big fight. I mean, that win over Thatch was huge, and Benson's so good all around. So the main event of that card should be great.
It would be nice if we do get that Eddie Alvarez Ben Henderson fight that we were supposed to get in January of this year.
Yeah, did Alvarez lose his last fight? Oh no, he won that decision. Yeah, that'd be a great fight actually. Then. Perfect timing for both.
All right, let's get as I mentioned here. Ronda Rousey may be fighting on the New Year's Eve card. We're still not sure of the opponent. A lot of, once again, Cyborg Santos putting herself in the news, calling out Ronda Rousey, saying that she was offered a fight in Dallas Stadium. Tito Ortiz, who I thought was her former manager, Billy, I guess now her manager again. I don't know, saying that she was offered a fight for Cowboy Stadium. Dana White now has even gone and made a story on the UFC website, something he typically doesn't do. He'll just say stuff on Twitter, or he'll make a thing on SportsCenter or Fox Sports Live or whatever. But he actually took the time to have like a sit-down article with one of the UFC website people saying that they did off Cyborg a fight, just not Ronda Rousey and not Cowboy Stadium. And she has to make 135 first before they can offer her a shot at the title. And it makes sense. She's never done it before in her career. And the whole reason that she didn't take the UFC contract initially and went to an Invicta was because she didn't think she can make 135. Then about halfway through her Invicta tenure, she decides that she's going to drop down. I believe actually her last two fights ago, she was supposed to fight at 135. She got hurt. And then when she came back to actually have that title defense, or not title defense, ended up being a title defense, she decided to not go ahead and drop down to 135. And then, of course, she fought recently again at 145, defending her Invicta championship successfully. Now, all of a sudden, she's back on the wagon of saying that she can absolutely make 135. Whether it's Invicta or the UFC, I think Dana White is correct. She has to make 135 somewhere, make it successfully, and obviously win before they can set this thing up, because I don't think it's fair to the other girls in this division, regardless of how big the fight is, Billy, to just give her a title shot and having never made weight at this weight class.
Yeah, I'm almost not even getting my hopes up for this fight because it feels like it keeps going in circles of her saying, I'll make 35, and then now we're saying, oh, come up to 45. And I don't know if it'll ever happen. I'd like to see Ronda just move up and fight her, only because, like, when you see dominant people like Anderson Silva or anything, they put their feet up. It's a little different case because he fought, like, not average dudes, but not like the elite, obviously, right up there. Like, he didn't move up and fight John Jones immediately. But maybe if she tested it out or something, she's so dominant her weight, I feel like she has to do something to give her a challenge, because I don't think Cyborg will ever make that weight.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't seem like. I mean, the fact she's gone back and forth so much saying that she can and cannot make 135 pounds, and that's why I was so upset when she didn't go ahead with that, like I said, 2 fights ago in Invicta, trying to fight at 135. And instead, she kind of took the easy way out there. And 135 is not going to be easy, but once you do it once, you got to believe it's going to be a little easier the second time. I guess that's my whole thinking. Like, you got to try. And if you can't do it, you can't physically do it, you can't do it. I mean, there's only so much your body can go through. And if, get as close as you can. And if you go, hey, I tried, I can't do it, I want to fight Ronda, it doesn't have to be for the title. See, the thing is, I don't think Cyborg really even wants the title. I honestly think it has nothing to do with that. I just think she legitimately wants to fight Ronda Rousey. And Ronda, does make a point. And I think Ronda is too caught up in the title to realize, like, just fight her. It doesn't matter if it's for the title. If you move up 10 pounds, obviously it's not going to be for your championship belt. Now, you get in a whole situation with the UFC going, well, then her next fight, people are going to not tune in because it'll be a title fight and she's already lost and blah, 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 and this. That's the risk you're going to take when you're going to make big money. I think if you're going to make big money off of this fight, you can take a little less the next one. Of course, again, you can always couple her fight with someone else's. It's not like she has to headline, but always has to headline by herself or anything. So I think that if, Cyborg, again, in the UFC or Invicta, has to try to get down to 135 against somebody. And if she can win that fight, let's talk for the title. But if she can't and it just misses way and she says that she can't, I think eventually if Ronda starts, if she beats Tate a third time,
there's nothing left.
Yeah, there's not much left. It's all honesty. And at that point, at 26 years old, does she retire with like 12 fights, 13? You know what I mean? Is she ready to call it a career? Yeah, I know she likes acting and doing that sort of thing, but is she going to walk away that soon?
I don't know. And like, even if she keeps going on, clearing out the back in this division, how long are people just going to want to tune into her just taking out, I don't want to say scrubs, but just people she's already beat 3 times, whatever? It can't go on much longer. She has to fight someone bigger, whatever, something.
All right, last bit on Ronda. She has said now in the news that she wants to play Carol Danvers, a.k.a. Captain Marvel, for the upcoming Captain Marvel movie produced by Marvel Studios. And I'm bringing this up because Billy and I are avid comic book readers, and I know some of our listeners are. If you don't know who Captain Marvel is, again, she is Carol Danvers, a former Air Force pilot that was endowed with powers of a alien race in the Marvel universe that gave her the ability to fly, absorb, and shoot energy blast out of her finger, and also take a great deal of punishment. That's probably one of her biggest attributes, is that she's able to take a lot of punishment and still coming because of her powers. And obviously Ronda Rousey, you kind of look at what she does, and you look at Captain Marvel, which is probably the most powerful female character in the Marvel universe. I don't know if she's ready for a huge title role like that, but in terms of her physical attributes and being what Captain Marvel represents, I don't know if Marvel can find too many better actresses that could fit that than Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, I think it'd be great if she could act. I mean, not gonna lie, from the stuff that I've seen her, and I don't think she's ready to do a headline role like that. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
Yeah, and that not only that, if she ends up doing that's a lot of time away from training. I mean, we're not just talking about simply taking 6 weeks off to go film a movie. I mean, we're talking about a huge blockbuster movie that's going to have a lot of press commitments and tours and flying around the country promoting this movie. I mean, this is a lot of time away from the UFC. And you also got in with the UFC give their biggest star the okay to do this. That's another thing too. We're also not, or maybe she's not considering.
Yeah, but I think they would. I mean, the hype's only going to grow. If she's undefeated, she goes and does this movie and comes back and does a fight. I mean, how huge. It's just only going to grow from stuff like that.
And you have a fight the weekend after opening weekend of Captain Marvel with her.
That's too much.
Right?
But, I mean, if they could pull that off in however many years, that would be a way.
Well, I had to throw it out there because it had something to do with comic books. So, speaking of, one last item. Josh Thompson has officially been released by the UFC and almost immediately is signed by Bellator. And I don't blame the UFC. I think this was a pretty mutual agreement. I don't think Josh Thompson was really going to compete anymore in the top 5 of the division. I think after that Tony Ferguson fight, I think it proved that he's now towards, getting towards the end of his career while still exciting and still a tough guy, not going to beat anyone in the top 5 anymore. And you add in the fact that, Thompson's, like a lot of guys, probably saying he's losing money off the Reebok deal. Whether that's true or not, we don't know. And, goes with Bellator for probably a little more base pay and obviously the potential of getting more on sponsorship money. So he has now been signed up with Bellator. And of course, let's not forget, he fought how many years in Strikeforce under the guidance there of Scott Coker. Probably still pretty good friends with Scott. And I think also that probably had a lot to do with it as well.
Yeah, I think he said in an article that like the UFC just couldn't match the offer that Bellator gave him, so that's why he just did it. But he's still really good too. I don't think he's I don't want to say as bad as some of the people that sort of are on that downhill and go to Bellator. I think he still competes. I mean, some of them losses are tough, but he's a really good signing for Bellator. I think he's exciting. He'll bring a lot of looks to the lighter weights at Bellator. I mean, that's already their good division, so.
Yeah, he's definitely probably going to have one fight against somebody, and then he'll probably take on their champion, Will Brooks, if he's still the champion. I imagine he would be.
He might even get a straight title shot, honestly.
That's true. That's true as well. All right, before we end headlines, I guess it's somewhat old news. Some fight fans may know this, some may not. And this is about former UFC fighter Lightning Lee Murray. If you don't know who Lee Murray is, he was a young up-and-coming British kind of brawler turned fighter. Ended up making his debut at UFC 46. He was kind of looked at as maybe the next guy to be the UFC middleweight champion. In his UFC debut at UFC 46, he was able to submit Jorge Rivera in less than 2 minutes. A few months later after that, he was attempted with felony road rage as he nearly beat a guy to death that apparently kind of sideswiped him. There wasn't enough evidence to convict him. The case ended up being dropped, but because he was from England, obviously needing a work visa to come over here and participate with the UFC, the U.S. State Department decided that those charges, they didn't like the way that sounded, so they ended up not allowing him a visa back to work in the U.S., and that pretty much officially ended his MMA career, as he only fought one more time. And believe it or not, he actually fought Anderson Silva and lost. That was before Anderson Silva, I believe, even fought in Pride. And a couple years later, he's kind of still. He was also known, I guess, during a. There were some UFC fighters over in England. And I guess there was some type of barroom brawl, as he was famous for. And I guess supposedly he knocked out Tito Ortiz during his prime. Ortiz claims that this never happened. However, some other UFC fighters and people that were around this supposed bar brawl all confirmed that yes, Lee Murray did in fact knock out the UFC champion Tito Ortiz. He kind of went on doing that kind of living fast lifestyle, getting in brawls until just a couple of years ago in 2006. Him and 6 other bandits were able to plot what's known as the Securitas heist, a bank in England, where they were able to nab $98 million, or a ridiculous, or I guess 53 million pounds. I guess that's all they could get away with, because I guess there was still 200 million pounds left in the bank, but they just couldn't fit it in their trucks. And they were able to mostly get away with this. Apparently, Lee Murray, along with fellow MMA fighter Paul the Enforcer Allen, also were able to escape to Morocco and live in Morocco for a while off the money that he stole in this bank heist. 4 other men were actually caught after the heist. Currently, there is still 1 missing gunman unaccounted for, and I believe, I'm trying to find the amount here. There's still one more, $32 million, and 1 other person accounted for. They ended up catching Lee Murray in Morocco after kind of getting beat up by some gangsters and on drug charges and selling and stuff, and his huge mansion there in Morocco. And now he's serving jail time in a Moroccan prison, and potentially for the next 20 years. And just kind of reading this story here, Billy, it sounds, if this to me has all the makings of a movie, and it's a movie if you saw, regardless of how they build it up, and then at the end they put based on a true story, you go, there's no way this happened. There's no way that some guy was this barroom brawler in England, ends up getting a chance to actually fight legitimately in the UFC, was able to win a fight, knocks out the UFC champion in some barroom brawl, then ends up kind of getting out of the sport for doing what he did, beat people up, and then all of a sudden is able to pull off, a bank heist in this century, $60 million and stuff. It's crazy. I don't know, or 100 million US or whatever. It's crazy. I just found out about this story, and it's kind of unbelievable.
Yeah, the bank heist part alone is so insane to me. Like, even if you just had whatever normal, like just 5 normal dudes you've never heard of pull that off, it'd be such an insane story. Let alone a dude that was like in the UFC, stuff like that. It's crazy to me.
So I had to bring it up. Some people, again, may know about this already. Maybe it's rehashing, but this is just something you don't hear about every day. And I don't know who they got to call to get movie rights for this, but I mean, maybe not, the UFC maybe wouldn't be happy about attaching this to, say, former UFC fighter Lance bank heist, but I just think the story is so incredible. I don't think it hurts the UFC, one bit. I mean, he was there for one fight. I mean, UFC 46 was like in 2005 or something like that. I mean, we're talking about a long time ago. So I just think the story is so incredible and whatnot that almost deserves to make a movie. And it's one of those movies where he thinks he gets away with it and ends up going to jail for something else kind of unrelated. And you can really show like maybe crime doesn't pay, stuff like that. So I just think the story is incredible, and I think definitely people would watch this movie.
Yeah, and they could finish it up with a matchup against War Machine or something. They can get that little fight going.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
ultimate prisons, UK versus US.
Oh man, that'd be crazy. Maybe once he gets out of prison, he only will be 58 years old, Billy. So I gotta imagine his next fight will be in Bellator.
Oh yeah, him and Shamrock. I mean,
How agree is that?
looking
He
for his
gets out
next
of a
fight.
Moroccan prison. Scott Coker calls up Lee Murray and is like, "Hey, we gotta have you fight, Lee. You're out of prison now. You gotta be good to go, right?"
You've had some time off.
Oh man. And honestly, I wouldn't put it past Scott Coker to do that.
The sad part is we'd all watch.
Yeah. They'd be like, from brawler to bank robber to convict, Lee Murray, makes his MMA return. I can see the promos now.
God, so ridiculous.
All right, let's get to this weekend's fight, UFC Fight Night 73, better known as UFC Nashville, the first time in Nashville in about 3 years there for the Volunteer State. I was live in attendance there for the 13 fights. Before we get to the main card, I want to go over this undercard a little bit. First fight of the night, and former XFC lightweight champion, as well as originally a Tennessee native in the hot sauce, Scott Holtzman. Great debut for him as he took on jiu-jitsu champion Anthony Christouolo, and boy, just put on a clinic in his stand-up in there, and just really outpaced the man from Greece. And there towards the end, I think he had him so hurt that he took it to the ground, went right into Anthony's game plan, jiu-jitsu, and was able to get the back and submit him by rear naked choke in the third round at 240. And really, for Scott Holtzman, you can't plan a better debut. I mean, you got to fight in your home state. You got to put on not only a great performance, but you get the finish, and you kind of do it at the guy's, own specialty. You really can't plan a UFC debut better than Scott Holtzman did.
Yeah, that's solid to him to come in. I'm surprised this was the opening fight, but when you come in and put on a dominant performance like that, anytime you're going to move up quick, especially when you're known from former or other organizations.
Marlon Vera also fought on the undercard. He gets a big victory over Roman Salazar. Vera, the only UFC fighter out of the country of Ecuador, and kind of losing this fight up until he gets this armbar, but he's stayed tough. He took quite a bit of damage, from ground and pound, and the stand-up was kind of even when it was on the feet, but he hung tough in there, and big victory for him. Salazar's a tough competitor. Also, Jonathan Wilson made his UFC debut. He's a training partner of Lorenz Larkin. He was able to knock out Chris Dempsey in 50 seconds. And I guess the biggest thing about this, Billy, was after the fight, he was asked, what did you think about the knockout? Was that what you were going for? And he goes, actually, when I threw that left, he goes, I wasn't trying to knock him out with that. He goes, that was like my setup punch. He's like, I was looking to throw like 3 or 4 more off of that, and he didn't win it down. So, I just finished it. So that was kind of like one of the biggest disses ever, is that he's like, I knocked you out with my setup punch.
Hey, it worked for him. That's solid.
So the man nicknamed known as Johnny Bravo, gets his victory there, and I believe all his victories are now by knockout. So for Chris Dempsey, he's a guy that he fought at middleweight when you and I were in New Jersey, Billy, and he was able to defeat Eddie Truck Gordon. So maybe a move back to 185. He didn't, I know 50 seconds and say, oh, he just got caught or whatever, but honestly, looking at weigh-ins and kind of his physique to some of the other guys that, and kind of then remember seeing pictures and the highlights of him fighting Eddie Truck Gordon. Yeah, I don't like the move up to 205 for him.
No, I don't know why he did it, but I'm sure that this will be the only time.
I think it was somewhat short notice that he ended up taking the fight, and that could be why. But yeah, I don't see a future for him at 205. Also, speaking of short notice, Willie Gates took this fight short notice against Dustin Ortiz. And, he just had a fight like 3 weeks before, beating Darryl Montague. And I think with that short time, including just the pace and wrestling that Dustin Ortiz is capable of, I probably would advise Willie Gates against taking this fight. But you got to give him all the credit in the world for taking this fight against Dustin Ortiz in Ortiz's home state of Tennessee. But he just wasn't ready for that wrestling and pace. And Dustin Ortiz was able to get a knockout in the third round in 258, and was really able to not only showcase his great wrestling, Billy, but I think add a lot of damage to it. And I think that's something, the evolution of Dustin Ortiz.
Yeah, he's such a solid and strong guy to take a fight short notice. So props to Gates on showing up and doing that. It's kind of crazy. I'm looking at the stat. They gave him 0 seconds of control throughout all that fight. That's kind of crazy to think, but he took the fight. Ortiz did well and dominated, so good win for him.
Chris Camuzzi was able to defeat Tom Watson. Pretty solid fight. And then Uriah Hall took on former sparring partner Holloway Bamboos, or Bambuze, I believe, and was supposed to fight Joe Riggs. He made short handiwork of the man from Nigeria. And afterwards, once again, gave a great emotional and heartfelt post-fight speech. And, I kind of joked around when he did this a couple years ago. Oh, this is going to be his thing now, giving these speeches. And it is. And he comes up with new, fresh material every time. It sounds great. Not only that, he said he loved fighting in Nashville. I mean, he came out to Bad Moon Rising by CCR. He said he wants to fight there again. He's got to get himself a pair of cowboy boots for, the country music down there. So, I mean, the fans loved it and ate it up. And, yeah, I guess that's just his thing, Billy. He just knocks out people really quick and then gives a great motivational speech afterwards.
I wonder how much thought he puts into that stuff because he's so consistent and so good with it. I mean, he's got to put a little bit of thought into those beforehand.
You think he has like a ghostwriter, or do you think that's all him? I mean, they're so well. I'm not saying he can't come up with that. I'm just saying, like, I wonder if someone's like, hey, I wrote this down. Why don't you say this after your win? Or so. I mean, that's we're talking about like some good stuff here. It's not just like, well, I think you should go for your dreams and I don't know, try to live life to the full. It's not like he's stumbling his way through these things. I mean, it's almost like he memorizes them.
Yeah. I don't know if he does or doesn't, if he's just that good where after a fight it just hits him, but either way, good on him. I look forward to his fights and post-fight speech.
Now, we're going to get to the main card here in just a second, but this fight, I believe, was supposed to happen in Germany before a couple of different things happened, but I really like Uriah Hall against Derek Brunson next. I really like that matchup here to end 2015, probably for both guys. I think that's, to me, what's next for both. Well, I don't know if it should be next. Will it? I don't know, but I think that's a great fight on a main card somewhere.
Yeah, that's a really good fight, and obviously we'll get into why in a second, but I would like to see that, and I think even on like a fight night, that's a solid co-main in my eyes, just looking at both of them, how they're fighting.
Also, I forgot, I kind of skipped over, but Frankie Saenz, he's a guy top 15 featherweight. I'm sorry, bantamweight. Not overly impressed with his win over Sawan Kakai, the man out of Sweden. To me, kind of a downturn performance. He showed a lot of good wrestling and grappling in his last fight against Alcantara, and I didn't really see that in this fight. I mean, I saw some decent stand-up, but it wasn't overwhelming. I mean, he did outstrike him 91-62, but he was only 1 for 6 on his takedowns, and actually his opponent, the man from Sweden, and Kakai, was 3 of 9. And so that what kind of to me was a lackluster performance by Saenz, beating a guy that obviously not as highly touted as Alcantara and kind of barely beat him. Maybe Saenz needs another fight before he gets someone, in the top 15, perhaps, because I was not, this is a guy that's supposed to shoot up the rankings, maybe a future title contender, but in that fight, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it wasn't the most, but I mean, you never know. Sometimes you have a tough cut or anything. You don't know how he's feeling, and as long as you come out there and get the win, it's good to at least keep moving forward and take what you can from it.
Let's get to the main card here. First fight of the evening, flyweight division, Ray Borg against UFC newcomer Gene Herrera. Borg ended up missing weight by about a pound for this fight, which was unfortunate, but when it got in there, once again, Billy, Ray Borg shows a high level of grappling, and also he didn't get the submission, but I thought he showed a lot of good submission skills in this fight. And he just completely dominated Herrera in this fight, in leading to a unanimous decision. And 30-27 cards. I mean, and not only that, you got to be efficient because I mean, 1 takedown in every round, and then controlled the rest of the round. So when you look at the number of takedowns, and only took him down 3 times, but he didn't let him back up after that.
Yeah.
completely dominated him, outstruck him 85-24. They only credit him with officially 2 submission attempts. It did seem more than that, but this was just a dominating performance by Borg. And, I know he lost to a guy on the card in Dustin Ortiz, but this is a guy that is a high-level grappler and a guy that you don't want on top of you.
Yeah, his grappling looks so good in this fight. It's a shame he missed weight because that type of stuff really holds you back. I mean, as far as the UFC, they don't want to put you too high up if you can't get your weight under control as far as higher ranking fights. But I mean, for him, if you look at that, I wouldn't want to be any UFC fighter and want to grapple with him or be on the bottom. He's really scary there. I don't remember the Dustin Ortiz fight, so I don't know if Dustin Ortiz just put him on his back and was able to hold it there. But I'm assuming he's good off his back too, so Ray Borg's a guy to look out for.
Also, fight. Maybe they'll do a rematch down the road.
Yeah, it wouldn't be bad. I'd like to see more of that in the UFC because you never know how fights go on certain nights. So
let's get to the next fight of the evening. This was not an overly huge upset, but still an upset and just an overall great performance. It netted her the performance of the night bonus, and that's Amanda Nunes against Sarah McMahon. And this is a fight, Billy, we said, if it stays standing, Nunes can most certainly knock out Sarah McMahon. But if it goes to the ground, can Nunes handle, the silver medalist Sarah McMahon on top of her? Well, she didn't have to worry about that as she was able to stuff 2 takedowns from McMahon and then was able to land a huge straight right that sent McMahon reeling. And Nunes was able to take the back, land some more punches, and actually then sink in a choke to get the submission tap at 2:53 in the first round to get the victory over the 4th-ranked Sarah McMahon and former #1 contender. And this is a huge victory for Amanda Nunes. Last time she kind of went up against one of the top girls in the division, had a great first round, but then gassed out against Kat Zingano. Now since then she's bounced back with 2 victories, this time a submission victory. And, we talk about contenders and what other girls have to do, but I honestly believe that Amanda Nunes is 1 victory away from a title shot. I think she gets Misha or Kat next, and then it's Ronda if she gets by one of those 2, because with her knockout power, her intensity, her size, I don't know if she beats Ronda, but she's one of the most intriguing challengers to Ronda if she can get there.
yeah, 100%. She's someone new, and I really slept on her. I'm pretty sure I picked against her in this fight, and her striking impressed me a ton. And then when it went to the ground, she got the finish. I'd like to see, because Misha's getting the shot, obviously, if her fighting Kat then, and the winner of that fights Ronda either way, because I'd like to see Kat fight Ronda again eventually, and then her would be a good breath of fresh air to fight her. So I do like that fight to be either way the next #1 contender. She really surprised me, though. Her striking looked good, and she defended the takedowns well, so her versus Ronda actually would be an exciting fight.
And like I said, I think a rematch against Kat Zingano is a great fight, to be quite honest, because if you watch back that first fight, she dominated Kat Zingano in the first round. There's no doubt about it. So she definitely has the tools to compete with the top girls in this division. And I think since that fight, she definitely has changed. I think she realized she has that knockout power. She can do takedowns, but she can't do it at the cost of her conditioning. And I think the last 2 fights we've seen that, because really, if you look at this fight against McMahon, she stops with 2 takedowns, then lands the straight right. It had nothing to do about conditioning. And actually, I got in a little bit of a debate with former co-host Dave Sadler. I said on Twitter, like, Nunes is probably 1 fight away from a title shot. And he's like, no, I don't think so. She doesn't have a gas tank. And I'm like, that's irrelevant. Having good cardio is irrelevant to getting a title shot. It's about who you beat. And if you're beating everyone in the first round, it doesn't matter how good of a gas tank you either have or don't have. It's all about getting wins. And if she gets another win, it's going to be hard to deny, regardless of how good her conditioning may or may not be.
Yeah, but in the end, I mean, it is going to come back to haunt her with that gas tank, fighting those people in the later rounds, obviously, with like a Kat Zingano. Obviously, we've seen it before. It happened. She dominates the first round, but if you can't get that finish, what are you going to do from there? But I mean, like you said, if you do, it doesn't mean a thing. You go on to fight as long as you keep winning.
I mean, Anthony Rebel Johnson doesn't have a great gas tank. He still got shot at the title, didn't he? You know what I mean? Like, a fighter's skills are not why he gets a title shot, or he or she gets a title shot. They get a title shot because they get wins.
Yeah, but it goes hand in hand, though, obviously, because you need him to win, and that's why she's going to struggle against those top few. Where does Sarah McMahon go from here, too? Is this 3 in a row losing?
Yes. And honestly, she's now 34 years old. Like I said, the third straight loss, second by finish in the first round knockout. I don't know. It's that, I mean, she's already a mom, it's not like she doesn't have stuff to do or doesn't have a busy life. I'm not sure how many more fights she has left. To be quite honest, she may only have one more fight left, and obviously if that goes, she's done, or maybe she decides to retire. I don't know. I just think that she's already done so much in her career. I'm not sure how much more she has left to give, and now she's even farther from trying to get that shot at Ronda again. I don't know, and she may already be 36, 37 by the time she gets back to that point. And does she want to grind for another 3 years?
Yeah, and that's if. I mean, that's a lot of good fighters you're gonna have to beat to get back. And yeah, I don't know. From here, I think you call it a career.
The next fight of the evening, not a great fight in the heavyweight division, as Jared Roseholt took on Timothy Johnson. There were a couple of exciting moments, a couple of trades, but overall, Johnson performed better than I thought, Billy, as he did get 3 takedowns out of 4 attempts, and he actually did outstrike Roseholt 86-53, and that's mainly because of his really good third round, where he knew he probably had lost the first 2 and just kind of went crazy there in the fourth, or in the third rather, as he outstruck Roseholt 40-8 in the third round. And I think Johnson clearly won that third round, but he didn't do enough in the first 2, kind of got control a little bit, taken down, and Roseholt walks away with the unanimous decision victory, 29-28 on all 3 cards.
Yeah, the only thing I want to know is, why did he shoot that takedown in the third? He had him so rocked. He's landing all this flurry, and then he shoots the takedown, which is just going to let the bell ring, really. I mean, I don't know why he did that, but it was close. Roseholt did enough to get the first 2 rounds. I think Johnson had the most dominant round of the fight in the third, but he still walks away with the loss.
And I think for Johnson, obviously, got to work a little more on his wrestling defense. I think he spent too much time with his back up against the cage, and I think that was one of the reasons for the loss. So he's got to maybe learn more a little bit in that. But this was really kind of the first real tough guy he's had to take on his career. I mean, Roseholt is a legit, All-American wrestler. This is a tough guy to deal with. So I think he's got to learn some things, but I think Johnson does show some potential here, in the heavyweight division, and he's just a big dude as well. It looked like he had to cut to make 265. So, he's a really big dude. Looks like a tough dude. I mean, he took some shots from Roseholt. I mean, he dished him out as well, but he took some shots. He hung in there, saw that, he had to go for desperation in the third, came close, didn't get the finish, but I think he's definitely a guy that, maybe not compete for a title, but he's definitely a guy I think does have some potential to move up the rankings.
Yeah, for sure. And this one was so disappointing because I put so much hype behind him as soon as I seen his facial hair. But, I mean, I hope he can do something in the future.
The next fight, kind of disappointing and bittersweet for me, as Sam Alvey took on Derek Brunson. As listener of the show, no. Last time we had Sam Alvey on the show, I asked him if he would fight at UFC Nashville for my birthday, that I was heading down there to see the fight, and originally said he'll see what he can do. A couple weeks later, fast forward, ends up announcing that his next fight will be against Derek Brunson, and it will be at UFC Fight Night Nashville. And I was super excited and super appreciative that Sam did that. Again, whether or not he actually thought of me when Joe Silva sent the email about fighting Derek Brunson in Nashville, I don't know. But either way, he still took the fight here. But it didn't end up the way I thought it would, as Derek Brunson didn't really even try for a takedown, Billy. He ended up going right at Sam Alvey, throwing hard punches, and Sam tried to counter, but 3 huge straight lefts by Brunson just started rocking Smiling Sam, and at that point you kind of see Sam wobbling around a little bit. He gets eventually dropped down. Brunson kind of has the back a little bit, throwing a couple punches to the face, and then the referee stops in at the 219 marker, and I believe it was not Mazzagatti. Who am I thinking of here? Mario Yamasaki steps in, kind of as Sam's moving maybe start to stand back up. But as he stands back up, he kind of wobbles a bit, and he's like, "What the?" I don't know. He seemed a little out of it. I'm not going to say it was a great stoppage. I'm not going to say it's the worst stoppage. Obviously, Sam would have liked the fight to continue, but Brunson was definitely all over him at that point, and I think was still looking to land shots. I don't know how much longer it would have went on had Yamasaki stepped in at that moment, but I fully believe Brunson probably finishes in that round. That's kind of the way things were looking there. Just this was the first time in a long time just Alvey got tagged first.
Yeah, Brunson really just came at him out the gate and didn't give him a chance, and he's so explosive and so fast. I think the stoppage was a tad early, and I think because the way Brunson was attacking, he was kind of leaving his face wide open. There's a few times where I was like, oh, he better slow down with that because Alvey was still throwing counters back. But I think it was a little early. I do think he would have finished him either way probably if he kept that pace up. It wouldn't have mattered. But tough fight for Sam Alvey. He just got blitzed in the gate and got caught, so it happens.
And I would say if there's one criticism of Sam, and maybe he has to work on a little bit, most of the time he's pretty flat-footed in this fight. Maybe a little more on the balls of feet, a little more kind of footwork in and out. I would say if there's anything he can work on for his next fight, that would be it. Because I think that was one of the detriments. And I'm watching the fight, and I'm kind of seeing him back against the cage, trying to swing off angles, and I'm like, circle around, circle, come back, circle around, then land the counter. And, obviously when you're getting dazed, sometimes you're not thinking that. But that was kind of the one thing I noticed. And maybe it would have helped, maybe it wouldn't have. But just kind of looking back in the fight, I think that was one area that I saw kind of led to his downfall.
Yeah, there's definitely something I need to fix. I think he just kind of got rocked real early. And once that happens, everything's kind of out the window. You're just trying to recover. And Brunson didn't really give him the chance.
Now, if you thought that was a bad call, let's get to our next fight here, the co-main event of the evening that has a lot of people fired up. Michael Johnson against Beneil Dariush in the lightweight division. Let's look this one over here. Looking at the first round, honestly, Billy, I thought both guys did a good job of avoiding getting hit. I thought both guys had good movement, not really getting hit with power shots. Then towards the end, I believe Johnson was able to land a straight right, rock Dariush a little bit, and I think that being the most significant strike in that round probably gave Johnson the first round. Looking at the second, once again, Dariush tried some taking downs. I think after getting rocked, he tried to get it back to his domain, being a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, but just man, it looked like he was shooting halfway across the state with some of these takedowns, not really setting them up. Johnson was able to dispatch not just all the takedowns in this round, but all the takedowns of the fight. As Dariush was 0 for 7 on his takedown attempts and 0 for 4 inside that second round. So I thought Johnson once again secured the second round. And then the third, one thing I wanted Dariush to do more. He didn't do it as much in the first, but he kind of did it more as the fight went on, was that left body kick that he had. And that's something, or to the legs, but that left back kick, he used it with perfection against Aaron Cruikshank. And I think it's probably one of the better techniques that he had. He started kind of opening up that with the leg kicks a little more. And actually I saw a breakdown here of, the strikes. Dariush was able to land 11, leg kicks, and also, did land some nice headshots, 52 shots to the head. Johnson really tore up the body. He didn't really throw many kicks, but had some good combinations of the body, 49 shots to the body. Overall, Johnson outstruck Dariush 85-75, stopped all 7 takedowns. As I said in the third round, I think that body kick really helped Dariush secure that round, and that would be the only round I would really give him, as he outstruck Johnson 33-26, but I thought it was either going to be 29-28 or 30-27 easily from Michael Johnson. Also adding in during this fight, he was the closest to finishing it. He landed several power shots during this fight, and you could tell Dariush did get hurt. But the decision came down as split and ended up being 29-28 twice for the winner, Beneil Dariush. And I don't know. Was it a close fight? Absolutely. But looking back at the stats, not only did Dariush get outstruck by 10, he was unsuccessful in all his takedown attempts, not to mention the most significant damage done in the fight and thrown in the fight was by Michael Johnson. I'm just not sure how he got another one of those rounds, Billy, to be quite honest.
I honestly I agreed with the decision. I gave Beneil rounds 1 and 3, and I thought he was controlling one. I thought he was doing good, keeping his reins, throwing his leg kicks, and I think when he got rocked, it kind of swayed everyone. Honestly, I even think the commentating was a little biased on this one, but I think Michael Johnson had the most dominant round in round 2, and obviously the most dominant shots of the fight. Like the only time anyone was a little rocked was when he hit Dariush in the first, I think it was. But he seemed to recover really quick, and I thought he controlled the rest of that round. I still gave him that round, and I thought 3 he did really well. He just kept that jab in his face, didn't really get to him at all. And I think those power shots kind of swayed, and I think him throwing those takedowns, getting denied so much, kind of made it look worse for him. I think if he wouldn't have even tried to attempt those 7 takedowns, the whole fight would have looked a lot better for him. But I thought he controlled it, and I thought not controlled it all the way, but I gave him rounds 1 and 3.
Well, regardless, definitely controversial, and I think because of that, I don't think the win moves Dariush as high as it could have, and obviously it doesn't drop Johnson as low as it should have. I'll put it that way. So I think both guys are right around the same place because of that, because I think if Johnson gets he'll probably get another good opponent for his next fight, and if he wins that, he's still right in the thick of things, even with the loss. And I think for Dariush, because of this, instead of now only maybe being 1 away, beating a guy the caliber of Michael Johnson, he still may be like 2 away, just because, again, he gets the win. But even if you look at the performance, regardless whether it was a win or a loss, not the best performance we've seen from him so far in the UFC.
Yeah, but I do think I know they don't like to do a lot of immediate rematches, especially not for a title shot. But if you ran this back with 5, I think you'd see a more clear victory, and I'd like to see that fight. I think Dariush was pulling away in that 3rd, and I think he would have been able to do a lot more dominant in 5, and I'd like to see that fight.
We'll see. I think because of that, we may see Michael Johnson try to get a fight as soon as possible, try to get that taste out of his mouth. That's what I think. We're probably going to see Johnson fight sooner rather than later.
Yeah, they both honestly will probably have a quick turnaround, but either way, I think they both, like you said, no one takes too big of a hit here or goes too high ahead. They're kind of sitting almost where they were.
Getting to the main event of the evening, former title challenger Glover Teixeira took on the hometown guy there for Tennessee and Ovince St. Preux. And I don't know if it was adrenaline dump. I don't know if it was just the pressure of fighting in the hometown or what. But whatever the case, Billy, Ovince St. Preux to me did not execute a great game plan against Glover Teixeira. Not only didn't seem ready for the takedowns of Teixeira, it didn't seem like he was doing the correct things to keep the fight standing in the area where he had better chances. He routinely was giving up his back when it did go to grappling. He got mounted several times. There were times where he was throwing ill-advised kicks to the head and body that were getting caught easily by Glover that led to takedowns. In fact, I would say 3 or 4 of Glover's 5 takedowns for this fight that only lasted less than 15 minutes were because Ovince threw a kick. And really, even after the first time it happened, Billy, I'm sitting there in my seat going, why is he throwing kicks? Just don't throw kicks. I mean, you're not a guy that's known for his great kicks, and he's seeing them all the time because you're not great at kicks. He's seeing them being telegraphed easily, and he's taking you down. And obviously, that was Glover's MO, was to not give Ovince a chance to knock him out on the feet and try to turn this into a grappling match. And he executed that game plan to a T. And then eventually, like I said, maybe gas down, adrenaline dump, gave his back up one too many times, and Glover was able to sink in the rear naked choke there in the 3rd round to get to end his 2-loss losing streak. And as much as it was a good performance by Glover Teixeira, I think it was an equally poor performance by OSP.
I think he kind of fell in love with that body kick when he rocked him hard in the first with it, and people tend to do that when they land something strong. They sort of fall in love with it. And I think the problem OSP had, what gassed him, is he's so athletic and so explosive. When he'd get in these bad positions on his back, he wasn't working proper position and get up. He was basically just exploding up, which it's going to get you up, but it's the most draining way possible, and there's no way you can only do that so long before the gas tank gives up. When Glover, he's just technical working, his footwork, his takedowns are timed, and he's just a machine that's going to keep going and going and eventually get that stop. When OSP can only keep up at that pace for so long.
Now, with the win, Glover kind of puts himself right back into title contention. It looks as though the UFC is going to move forward with the winner of Rashad and Ryan Bader getting the shot at the winner of Gustafsson and Cormier. That's kind of how things appear to me on the outside. Now you have Rumble Johnson coming up against Jimmy Manuwa in just a couple of weeks in Vegas. I wouldn't be surprised that the winner of that fight, Manuwa and Rumble Johnson, takes on Glover next for the next contender.
Yeah, I'd like to see that, or I don't know how long they want to wait. Whoever loses the DC Bader or the DC Gustafsson fight.
The loser of that or the loser of Johnson Manuwa probably fights OSP next, I would imagine. And then, boy, am I forgetting somebody? And then, of course, it probably won't affect the rankings of the title picture, but we're probably going to get Rampage Shogun somewhere here in the end 2015 as well.
Yeah, I feel like there is someone in that top 5 I'm not thinking of, but yeah, it seems all pretty booked up for now, and then we never know where John Jones could come back and throw a wrench in the whole thing, really, because if he comes back at some point, that Rashad fight's not even going to happen yet. Or I shouldn't say Rashad, the winner of Rashad. But
right. All right, well, that about ends it for this week's Beyond the Cage. Any other final thoughts on this week's show, Billy?
Nothing too much. Just can't wait till there's fights next weekend. Something to do.
All right, for Billy Brand, you can follow him on Twitter at WBrand21. I am your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham. And once again, before we end the show, head over to our Facebook page, facebook.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. Like it, share it, tell your friends, and we will start a contest when we get 6 more likes at 400 likes for a signed photo from UFC fighters Sam Alvey and Jessica I. So for Billy Brandt, I am Jim Graham. Thank you for listening to another edition of the Beyond the Cage Podcast.